Hello and welcome. My name is Shadow and today we will be talking about what I believe to be one of the most underrated Warframes in the game. A Warframe whose Helminth ability is also probably one of the most underrated Helminth abilities, Banshee. Now, Banshee doesn't really fit into the current meta of the game, because the current meta of the game is just do one thing and everything blows up. Banshee has a bit more elegance to her style and may be overlooked because of it, but when you start to understand her kit a bit better, she can be really powerful. She's still not the best Warframe in the game, but she's still really good. Banshee's passive will make all weapons silent. This includes any gunblades as well as sentinel companion weapons. Now, this massive may not seem that important, and for generic gameplay, it probably isn't. But she has a unique trait with one of her abilities that makes her very good for leveling weapons, and this passive is very, very useful when used in synergy with it. Banshee's first ability will send out a shockwave of sound ragdolling enemies. The actual ability isn't really impressive at all. It does a tiny little bit of impact damage, and I guess just ragdolls enemies. However, with the augment, the ability will armor strip enemies by up to 70%. This means that you only need 143 power strength to armor strip enemies by 100%. Sure, the armor strip is only directional as the ability works in a cone, but it is still an incredibly good armor stripper, especially when dealing with priority targets. Banshee's second ability is called Sonar. Banshee will reveal all the enemies on the minimap in range. This was more of a bonus back when enemy radar wasn't a default thing that you could have in the game. Additional to this though, however, Banshee will place a weak spot on one of the enemy's appendages or their torso. This means that there are a few different places that it can show up on an enemy body. The ability, however, can be reactivated to place additional weak spots on other parts of their body. If you eat an enemy body part, which is highlighted by the weak spot, you will deal 500% extra damage to them, of course scaling off power strength. You don't actually need to hit the weak spot itself, you just need to hit the part of their body which is highlighted by the weak spot. Status effect DOTs such as Heat, Toxic, and Slash do not benefit from this damage buff, however Gas and Electric do, as both Gas and Electric are capable of hitting specific body parts, where Heat, Toxic, and Slash are not. You are also able to double up weak spots on one single body part, which will have the ability stack with itself multiplicatively, but only twice. The augment for this ability will make it so that killing an enemy by attacking its highlighted weak spot will reactivate the ability for 100% of the remaining duration. This is a very, very good augment and almost a must-have augment, as it will make it so instead of needing to constantly recast the ability to get it on new enemies or get more weak spots on enemies in your area, all you need to do is kill enemies around you and the weak spots will constantly be replenished on new enemies that enter the range, and also putting more weak spots, making it easier to hit them on enemies near you. However, the additional effects of Sonar only activate for 100% of the remaining duration of the ability. This means that once the original cast of the ability runs out of duration, all subsequent Sonars will also run out. But you can also just recast the ability. You're totally cool. Banshee's third ability, and her Helminth ability, and what I believe to be one of the most underrated Helminth abilities, is Silence. You will create an aura around yourself. Whenever an enemy enters this aura, they will be stunned for 2 seconds. You can increase the length of the stun by using cold status effects or other forms of slow. For example, the other Helminth ability, Plume. Enemies in the aura will not be able to hear any sound. That includes gunfire, alarms, and any other forms of sound. However, that is only enemies in the aura. If you're using this as a Helminth ability, it doesn't mean that your guns will suddenly be silenced, as enemies outside of the aura will still be able to hear them. Enemies in the aura won't be able to activate any special abilities. This includes Eximus units abilities, this includes Acolyte abilities, and it includes Lich abilities, making Silence an incredibly useful Helminth whenever taking on Liches, as you can stop them from activating any of those pesky abilities that can make fighting them very annoying. The augment for this ability will give you increased damage upon finisher kills, and which gives this ability actually a unique synergy with Ash. But on Banshee and most other Warframes, this augment won't really be used that much, except for one particular use, which is good for leveling because it has a unique effect. I will be making a separate video on exactly how that effect works and how you can use silence to fastly level your Warframes and abilities, but later, not in this video. Banshee's fourth ability is called Soundcrake. Banshee will slam her hands into the ground, locking her entirely in an animation, preventing her from being able to activate any other abilities, or fire any weapons, or move around, or do anything except just stay in the animation. While in the animation, she will drain energy. The ability will push back enemies away from the epicenter of the Soundquake. It will do basically no damage. It doesn't affect a numerous amount of enemies that normally aren't affected by crowd control. Overall, this is a pretty crappy ability. The augment for this ability will make it so that instead of making it a channel ability, you just activate it and it sends out one shockwave. Still not really useful. But that's okay, because it just means we have a free Helminth slot to put on any other helmet that we want. This build that I'm about to cover is designed for disruption missions, and it is of course a steel path build. However, I have tested this build in survival missions and it still absolutely destroys. So it will also work on pretty much any other mission you want to do it in. It would be especially good for like mobile defense and excavation missions because of its crowd control capability. However, I definitely wouldn't recommend doing it for defense because of its crowd control capability. It will make doing a defense mission much slower, so don't do it for defense. This is a steel path variant build, but you can definitely change it around to make it more viable for someone who's not up to steel path yet and doesn't have all the resources in the entire game for them. The Helminth for this build will be Gloom. I already showed off the capabilities of Gloom when paired with Silence, as it will make the stun duration from Silence longer, which is an incredibly useful crowd control tool. As well, enemies are stunned, they can't hurt you. The actual way this build works is very simple. We are going to, of course, make sure that Silence and Gloom are active at all times to give us that very useful crowd control tool. Gloom and Silence will make pesky enemies around us become less of an issue by crowd controlling them, and Gloom will also slow down the Demolist units to make them slower on approach. We will be using sonar whenever possible as well to just absolutely kill enemies like they're nothing. And when a demolition is in range, we will reactivate Slowma to place a weak spot on the demolition units to make it very easy to kill them. And we will of course be using Sonic Quake with its augment to armor strip the demolition units, as we will be using Viral on our weapon. And demolition units will have the clone flesh health type, making them weak to Viral. For Corpus enemies, some will have the flesh health type, which is weak to Viral, but some will also be robotic. So instead for modding for Viral Slash, like the setup I will show in the video, I would recommend to instead mod for Toxic Radiation. Reason being is that Toxic is also strong against the flesh health type, and it also bypasses shields. Meanwhile, Radiation is good against the robotic health type, which is the other health type that Corpus enemies can have. We will be using 2 Amber Archon Shards on this build. Basically, this is for Sonar, as Sonar has a pretty slow casting animation, so we're going to speed that up with the casting shards. If you don't have Archon Shards yet, simply just use Natural Talent and you'll be fine. I did put on 1 Violet Archon Shard for the health to energy pickup conversion. I wanted to put Equilibrium on this build, but I didn't have the mod space, so I decided to do a Violet Archon Shard instead. As you can see, it's only 20% conversion, where Equilibrium is 110% conversion. So I don't actually know how good this is. It honestly could be a waste of an Archon Shard. It might not even be doing that much for my energy economy. So if you don't have the resources to get a Violet Archon Shard, don't stress, because like I honestly don't know if it's really helping out that much, but I have it, so I'm using it, I suppose. For the Banshee build, we have Arcane Energize for additional energy economy, along with Primed Flow for that extra energy economy. In the Aura slot, just run whatever. I run Steel Charger for the extra mod polarity. Do make sure to put Primed Sure-Footed in your Extra slot if you want the best possible build, as it is a very big DPS and survivability increase, because when you get knocked down and forced on your back, it really does affect your gameplay, like a lot. For survivability, we will be using a health tank setup. We are using Gloom, which not only is a fantastic crowd control ability, but it also heals us by giving us life steal for our weapons. So we will be using Adaptation and Arcane Blessing for the extra health. For power strength, we will be using both Umbral Intensify and Blind Rage. We don't need a lot of power strength to fully armor strip with Sonic Boon, but we do want as much power strength as we can, because look at that 11.7 times damage multiplier when we hit the weak spot. Very nice. Prime Continuity plus Organ Message for some ability duration, as all of her abilities, except for her first ability, really scale off ability. Gloom's Drain is lowered by duration, and then of course Silence and Sonar scale of duration. And then we have both of her augments, Sonic Fracture for the armor strip and Resonance for the extra instances of her second ability. If you're not up to Steel Path and you don't have access to things like these two arcanes or any of these three mods, well, you should have Umbral Intensify if you completed Sacrifice, otherwise Normal Intensify. Not Prime Continuity, Normal Continuity. No Prime Flow, Normal Flow. You don't have Adaptation because you haven't locked up Traces yet, well, just use a health mod. Arcane Blessing because you haven't unlocked Cerumen yet, well, don't use it at all. Arcane Energize because you haven't done Eidolons yet, well, again, just don't use it at all. Just run Xenoric instead. I mean, I run Xenoric anyway, for energy economy, but yeah. These are things you definitely need to get your hands on as you progress throughout the game, but if you're not at that stage of the game yet, then don't stress, you'll get there eventually. Take the game in your own pace. Now, our main DPS weapon for this build will be the Taurid Incarnate, because it's just really powerful. For the evolutions, we will be using the Final Fuselage, which increases damage, and then Multi-Shot, which increases the damage of the weapon, and then it increases the Multi-Shot and the last shot. Alternatively, you can do this one because it will increase your damage by a bit more and give you more multi-shot. It will just consume your ammo count directly, which it didn't sound like something I wanted. For this one, I decided for projectile speed because it's actually a pretty big bonus projectile speed. Lingering damage field duration double for the first shot and increase maximum magazine capacity also didn't really sound like something I needed that badly. And of course, for the last evolution, we did go for extra critical chance. We didn't need any extra additional status chance, so going for status chance and critical chance wasn't needed, as just this one gives me more critical chance. And again, we didn't need any extra status chance, so the critical chance made no sense. For the build, it's a pretty stock typical rifle build. We're using Galvanized Scope, Galvanized Aptitude, of course, Scope for the additional multi-shot, Aptitude for the status chance, and then for the gun CO effect on kills, we have, of course, critical delay for the crit chance. Bonus, yes, it does lower our fire rate, but that is fine because we have Vigilant Fervor to offset that negative fire rate. Vital Sense for the crit damage, and then we have we have Primed Prior Rounds, which will mix with the Toxic that Taurid natively does to create Viral. And 100 munitions to give us a viral toxic build, a viral slash build. And Primed Merciless is of course our base damage. Definitely do not underestimate the importance of having a faction mod on this type of build. Not only are faction mods multiplicative with base damage from Primary Merciless, but they also double dip with status effects, so that it can be extremely powerful for damage over time status effect builds like this one. Now, we are using Galvanized Aptitude Gun CO for our Taurid, but we only have Viral and Slash, meaning it's not going to be very good. So we're going to be using our Epitaph as a primer for large targets, mainly Demolist or any other priority unit, to apply more status effects to give us that extra damage. For the Epitaph primer build, we have ability utility with Amalgam Barrel Diffusion, giving us multi-shot and dodge speed. Lethal Torrent for more multi-shot and of course fire rate. We have Isolated Isoplast, which will give us radiation, which is a pretty helpful crowd control tool, and it gives us even more fire rate. Augur Seeker and Augur Pact are really just for the shield to energy to shield conversion, which gives us a bit more utility on top of it. And then of course we have Frostbite and Pistol Pestilence for the status chance and viral damage, and of course Sure Shot for even more status chance. making it so this weapon will proc all of the IPSs, radiation, viral, and cold, as epithet force procs cold. For our companion, we will be using the Death Cube for a massive amount of energy generation. How do we get energy generation with Death Cube? Well, it's simple. We have energy generator, first and foremost, then we have duplex bond, and then we have synth deconstruct. Let me explain. Energy generator will have the Death Cube drop in energy each time it gets 10 assist kills. That's already an increased supply of energy orbs. Duplex bond will have the companion clone itself up to 3 times each time we expend 100 energy. And when those clones kill an enemy, the enemy will have a 50% chance to drop an energy orb. So even more energy orb generation. And then we have synth deconstruct. Enemies that are injured by the companion have a 25% chance to drop extra health orbs. And we have the Violent Archon Shard that will be converting health orbs into energy. So even more energy. On top of this, we have Assault Mode. Assault Mode is needed because without Assault Mode, Sentinels cannot attack enemies. Vacuum because it's read it. Calculated redirection and enhanced vitality because they're just going to increase the survivability of our companion. Regen because it will make it so if our companion does die, it will come back quicker. If you have the mod capacity for primed regen, I definitely recommend using that because it's better, obviously. But don't sweat if you don't. Guardian because it will restore our shields with a full shield gate instance whenever they break, which is very useful, a very good tool. And then Contagion Bond because it will make it that whenever our companion kills enemies, it will spread the status effects that it does to enemies in the area. And the weapon setup that our Death Cube will be doing will be a viral heat build, so this will also be a pretty big DPS for it. Now we will be using the Verglass, as it's really the only weapon for Sentinels that is capable of really killing enemies. We have Primed Bane of Grenier, which obviously can be replaced with any faction mod, and Serration for our faction damage and base damage. Again, this is a status effect DOT. Faction mods double dip with DOTs, making them extremely powerful for them. We have Rim Rounds and Militant Force for viral. And then we have Thermite Rounds for heat. You'll notice that I have more of a viral priority than a heat priority. This is unfortunate. I don't have a second unranked Rim Rounds that I can replace with this one to lower my viral ranking. I do however recommend putting on an unranked Rim Rounds to give you viral, but I'm still making it that your heat is a higher priority. I have Hellfire along with Thermite Rounds to kind of balance it out a bit. Fast Hands for reload speed, this is actually pretty important for Verglass, and of course, Speed Trigger for fire rate. Our utility weapons are of course Epitaph, which I've already covered, and then we're using as well Kratos. Kratos is good because this evolution gives you sprint speed and slide, and this evolution gives you parkour velocity. The actual build for Kratos literally doesn't matter. Now I am using Xenoric just for additional energy economy, but it doesn't matter what focus skill you are using for this build. You can use Matarai for extra casting speed and power strength and also damage. Xenoric for energy economy and power strength like what I'm using. Vazarin for a bit of survivability, and Yunaru for armor stripping and knockback ability. I hope you enjoyed this video, and before we close it up, I do have a few plugs to do. For example, my Let's Play channel, where I play end games that I feel like it with my friends. If you're interested, please do check that out in the description below. I also have my clan Discord. If you want to come hang out and talk with us, please join the Discord. And if you want to invite to our mountain clan with almost fully research completed, then do ask in the Discord and I can get you an invite. And I officially have a TikTok and an Instagram for this YouTube channel under the same name, Racho. The links will be in the description and of course also on my actual YouTube page. So if you're interested and want to keep more up to date with what I'm doing, do check out those as well. Anyway, I do hope you enjoyed this video and I hope you learned something from this video, as that is always my main priority, to help teach people about this game a bit better. And if you did enjoy something, and if you did learn something, then please consider giving me a subscribe, and maybe even a like, and write a comment in the comment section. I don't really care what it is, you can write whatever you want. Maybe you could tell me what Warframes you also think are underrated. Yes, that's actually a good idea. Tell me what other Warframes you think are underrated in the game, and maybe I might make a video on them in the future. But until next time, bye bye.